and welcome to Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres, episode 178, and a Happy New Year, first episode of 2024. Today we're going to be doing a review, or a best of rather, 2023. I've asked everybody to send me in their best or favourite images of 2023, along with a little bit of explanation about them, and hopefully we can take a look, become inspired by what other people are up to, maybe steal a few ideas for ourselves to try out in the coming year. Also, I'm going to be introducing a new feature for the year ahead. Stick around, I'll tell you in a moment. So, hello, yes, here we are, live on YouTube, unless you happen to be watching the recording. Of course, we have 177 other episodes all sitting on this YouTube channel for you to catch up on if you wish. Make sure you subscribe, make sure you click the like button as well. And if you do happen to be watching live, then say hello, leave a comment. Let me know where you're from. Tell me what the weather's like. Tell me if you have any major New Year plans in line. And let's get the discussion going. I can see we've got a few people in already. Meg says hello everyone. Susan says hello everyone from a bright and sunny but really frosty Kakubri. Maggie says Happy New Year to everyone from a cold, sunny Castle Douglas. And she's right, here it is, just outside. It is we're just down 9 miles down the road, same as Susan. Beautiful clear days today, but cold and frosty. But a lovely day nonetheless. Sandra says, hello everyone from a sunny but cold Birmingham. Stacy says, good morning, and after a snowy and rainy Saturday. It's chilly and cloudy this morning. April says, hello everyone from a rainy Long Island, New York. Nadia says, hi everyone and a Happy New Year. John says, good day everyone from Columbus, Ohio. And Andy says, hey folks, Happy New Year. So, welcome. Yes, we have people in. We have photos to look through. And so, yes, where are we at? So today's episode is the best of 2023. So I put in a request for people to send me their best or favourite images of the past 12 months and to let me know a little bit about what makes it their best or favourite image of the year. And for me, yeah, love looking at the photos. I also love the stories behind the photos. So that's always a little bit of fun when people can kind of give that little bit of insight too. Now the other thing I will go into more detail at the end of the podcast, so don't rush off too quickly, make sure you stick around. But everybody loves a smug point. Whenever I've sort of thrown smug points into the into the podcast, I think everybody feels a little bit smug if they get a smug point. It's a rather kind of fun thing. But what I've decided to do for 2024 is kind of almost formalise it a little bit. What we're going to do is I'm going to start a Smug Points leaderboard. So that means I'm going to have specific number of smug points for particular things like entering a challenge or turning up to the live event or anything like that. So I'll run through some of these at the end of the podcast. So like I say, don't rush off too fast at the end, and we'll tell you more about the smug points. Meanwhile, Robert's joined us and says, howdy all from Texas. Glad you could make it along. So let's make a start then. Let me dig out the folder, and what we're going to do is we're going to start with Susan in Kakubri. So now, although I generally say send me one image, Susan has in fact sent me two. But that's okay, it's New Year, we'll let her away with it. So the very first photo she sent is this one. So Susan said, the best of 2023 is proving difficult. I have two favourite images. Well, I think actually I have more than that in reality, but these are my personal favourites. The steampunk man was taken during the summer at an event in Kakubri. I don't usually take photos of people. I leave that to the experts who know how to direct, etc. But this guy really took my eye and was a willing victim. And this is a good point actually, which is if you go along to festivals, whether it's a steampunk festival or a music festival, any kind of gathering, especially where people are dressing up, you generally find that everybody tends to be much more willing to pose for you for the camera. So if you're kind of a bit wary about, you'd kind of like the idea of doing, say, kind of street style photography or street style portraits, but you always kind of feel a bit wary about going up and asking anyone. In a festival situation, especially anybody who's dressed up like this, they're expecting people to point cameras at them. So actually, if you go up and say, oh, love your hat, do you mind if I take a quick photo? 99 times out of 100, they're going to say yes. There has to probably be a real reason, like they are in a definite rush to get somewhere before they're going to say no, but nobody's going to take offence and nobody's going to turn around and be nasty about it. So, you know, the festivals are always a great place to go with that. So, yeah, nice start with that, Susan. I know, as you say, you usually avoid photographing people, but here was an opportunity. She says, we seemed to gel and I asked him to strike a few different poses, none of which really worked until I asked him to touch the rim of his hat. He looked directly at me and asked like this, and I clicked the shutter. I quite liked the mono treatment, as the colour version had a few distracting purples on his jacket and gauntlets. In retrospect, I would have preferred the wall to have been a bit more out of focus. Wrong aperture, I'm afraid. Fair enough. And so very often with these things, you don't, you know, experience teaches you, you know, that when you're going into a particular place, that particular settings on your camera are likely to work better for you. And again, quite often, if you are in a busy situation, the wider aperture you can get, the more you are likely to blur out distracting features in the background. So that was a fun one from Susan. And then she says, I'm now going to be cheeky and submit another one. This is Dying Tulip. And here we go. It says, I keep lots of dead flowers, leaves and various stuff I find on my walks. My windowsill is full of stuff. The dead and dying flowers have a beauty all of their own, often much more attractive than when alive, I think. This was and actually just a quick sideline on that. There is a whole kind of movement in photography, sort of sometimes summarised as like the beauty of decay. A couple of photographers I know who specialise in architectural photography, where they go out and they find abandoned ruins and stuff like that. And there's kind of, but also this notion of the dying tulips or the flowers or collections of twigs and broken pottery, and you know, it's that idea of there's a whole kind of mood and atmosphere of melancholy, and in fact, in some ways, goes back. You can trace it back through art to. I've suddenly forgotten the word for it, but there's a Latin phrase which essentially is about the idea of your awareness of death. That mortality, and we are but fragile beings on this planet for a short amount of time, and sometimes there's a kind of whole kind of mood and melancholy that kind of ties in with that as well. And you know, certainly in some of the old paintings and what have you, there's a whole religious significance to that as well. Susan goes on. Where are we? Yes, this was a tulip I grew in the spring, and although it was extremely vibrant when growing, I love how it has faded. I like the way there is a soft reflection underneath the vases, provided by the black plastic-like surface from inside my photo box / tent. I lit from the side, trying to get more emphasis on the texture of the petals. And I think that's right. I think whenever you're trying to get a sense of texture, you want to make sure you've got some kind of side light, or at least no further forward than about 45 degrees, but generally speaking, the further round to kind of 90 degrees you get, the more the texture and landscape of anything that you photograph is going to stand out. Sometimes you might have a reflector just to kind of create a little bit of fill if you want to get some of the shadows, and it still allows you that depth within it. So beautiful shots there, Susan. And she says, finally, I must thank you again for your excellent podcasts. I find them informative, inspirational and enjoyable, and your wizardry with Photoshop never ceases to amaze me. Sunday afternoons now means a cup of coffee or hot chocolate, depending on my mood, a biscuit and Kim Ayres with an hour of looking at yours and other people's images. Love it. Well, that's a lovely thing to say. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'll have a little smug moment. But thank you, Susan. I'm glad you really enjoy these, and thank you for letting me know. So, great start to the afternoon, I think, here. So we got a few comments in on that. Sandra says, great portrait, works well in black and white. April says, very true, they are fun. Nadia says, really lovely picture, it looks nice in black and white. April says, I like this photo in black and white. Andy says, great portrait, love the textures. Stacy says, love steampunk. Reminds me of my costume for Halloween. It's so cool. Black and white makes the photo look so much better. John says, nice. Steampunk is always fun. Then we move on to the creative life. April says, creative still life. Stacy says, love a still life and dry flowers. Sandra says, lovely still life. So does Nadia. And Susan says, thanks everyone. Excellent. That's a great start to the podcast. So thank you very much for sending those ones in, Susan. Right, okay, let's move on then. So John, where are we? So if I go back to here, that's, oh no, that one, click here, do that, and then that. There we go. Nope, not that. That. Ha. New year, new set of technical problems. Right, so John says, attached is my favourite photo that I took in 2023. It was taken at an old grist mill in the state park of southwest of Virginia, about a 4-hour drive for me. I travelled with several other photographers to this location. This shot is the one I wanted from this trip. I've been to this location once before, and I knew in my mind the shot I wanted. It turned out well, I thought. The location being what it is, many other photographers have taken a similar shot, but I wanted my own version. Many other photos were taken of this mill and around, but this is the one I'm hanging on my wall. Well, that's great, John, and fun photo for there. Really colourful, beautiful fall colours in the background there. You've done quite a bit of work there on kind of sort of HDR to be able to bring the shadows out in the foreground without blowing out and overexposing the sky and the colours of the trees in the background. I think what I like about this whole notion is sometimes we can kind of be a bit intimidated. There are particular shots, there are particular beauty spots, there are particular places, there are particular buildings which become a kind of almost a kind of mecca for photographers. You know, that there are places where everybody wants to go and get their own shot, their own version of it. And sometimes we're kind of, you can kind of feel a bit, well, yeah, I want to get this. Am I just copying everybody else because I know it's a good place? But then again, kind of so what? I think you will always have your version of it in the end when you're standing there and taking it. And whether you just want to have, you know, in this case, the mill a little bit more centered or a bit to the left or a bit to the right, whether you want a little bit more of the waterfall in, whether you want to have the rock in the foreground, whether you decide to stand on tiptoe or get down low, you're always going to have your own take on it. As long as you are kind of being as authentic as you can to your taste, to what feels right for you, then I think it's well worth going and photographing these other places. Don't feel like you can only go to places that other people haven't. There are two, it's strange, there's two professional photographers, professional landscape photographers I know in the region who are totally apart, poles apart in their style of photography. One of them, I think he feels a bit intimidated about the idea of, or just doesn't really like feeling that anything he takes is going to be compared to anybody else's. So he spends a huge amount of his time traipsing out into the hills, into the middle of nowhere to find some little rock pool or something that nobody else is ever going to see so that he can take a photo and not feel he's in competition with anybody else. The other photographer I know goes to all the best beauty spots, all the places where you will clamber out of your car or your bus and take the photo, but he just takes a better photo of it. He will go there at the right time of year, at the right time of day, under the right light conditions, or he will go back several times until he's got the right conditions and then just take the kind of photo that you wish you'd taken. And to be honest, he also does a lot of postcards as well. So, you know those times when you've gone to a place and you've taken a few photos and you've gone, and then you've just gone and bought the postcard. He's probably the one who supplied the postcard. So there's different ways you can go about it, and really a lot of this comes down to your personality. But great shot there, John. Thanks for sending that one in. Right, where are we? So Stacy says, very colourful and love grist mills. April says, so pretty, love the mills, love the orange reflection on the water. Susan says, gorgeous colours at a superb location, John. Sandra says, beautiful autumnal landscape. And he says, love the long exposure on the water. And that's true, that's not always an easy thing to do during daylight. So that's where ND filter or something usually comes in handy. Stacy says grist mills are rustic and iconic. There is a historical take on them. And John says, thanks for the comments, everyone. Right, okay, so let's move on to the next photo. The next one comes from Stacy. I thought this was quite fun. So Stacy says, this is one of my favourites from 2023. I took this at a garden centre. that I visited with my cousin Rich. He wanted to see if he could get some plants for his house. Since I love gardening and I love for houseplants, I took a ride. This place also has vintage furniture, farmhouse type, and they display the items with a combination of pottery, glassware, and vases with greenery. And I think that's a fun, guys. Sometimes when we want to be able to sort of set up a kind of still life or domestic image or something like that, and we haven't got a clue where to begin. Sometimes we can take advantage of what somebody else has set up for us. And some of these places which sort of put on these displays, you've got stylists who kind of know what they're doing. They have all in this case, the cups, the wooden table, the furniture, the blankets, lovely, kind of wooden background and doors, the peeling paintwork. So it's sort of set there waiting for you. So take advantage of it. So yeah, nicely spotted there, Stacy. Kind of fun thing to do, I think. So thanks very much for sending that one in. April says, love it. I love the colour of that door. Yeah, it's rather cool blue, isn't it? And Sandra says, beautiful rustic still life. Nadia says, beautiful picture. Love the texture. Susan says, I love how the colours in the blankets echo the colour of the door and the chairs. Very cleverly set up. Great image, Stacy. And John says, I like this shot of a rustic scene. Cool. Right, okay. Next up then, we're going to go for Nadia. Now, Nadia's been out into the middle of nowhere. Says, this is my entry for the best from 2023. It was looking down from the car park at I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce this one, but it looks like Out Cranagh Falls. Cranagh. There's Scots words in there which there's a way of pronouncing that, and I should really have checked it before kind of coming on. Anyways, with the loch and the falls behind me, to be truthful, it's my second best. My best is my granddaughter, which I'm reluctant to show on YouTube. That's in the public domain, and she's only 2 years old. I like the way the light falls on the landscape, highlighting the golden autumn colours and the winding road. It's a tricky one, I think, when you are photographing grandchildren or whatever. Some people feel comfortable with putting them online, some people don't. It really is a personal choice. I don't think there is a definitive right or wrong. There's what you feel comfortable with, or what the parents of, if it's a grandchild, what your daughter, son, or whatever feels about it too. That's fine. And it's very often, I think, a lot of our favourite photos are the ones of children, grandchildren, because we have that emotional connection to them. This beautiful landscape, I love the winding road that goes through it. And it's empty. I know what it's like driving on those. It's one of the wonderful things about there's areas in Scotland where you can drive, and certainly at certain times of the year when you can be driving for long periods of time without seeing anybody else, and it just feels like you've got this magnificent landscape all to yourself, and you can breathe that air in there. It does. It's very evocative. It kind of takes me right there. So yeah, lovely shot there, Nadia. Thanks for sending that one in. Right, what am I doing here? I'm doing that. So, what do we say? Andy says, great colours in this one. April says, pretty landscape. I would love to see it in person. Stacy says, this is a beautiful scene. Love the mountain and the widening roads. John says, very good landscape. Love the colour and the road line. April also says, I can see this if I go to Scotland. Nice. Well, absolutely. You have to come to Scotland at some point, April, and then let us know. And, who knows, maybe we can do like have a photographers meet up if you happen to be going anywhere near where any of us live. So Susan and I are both down in the southwest of Scotland, and Nadia's up in Fife as well. So there's a couple of us spread about. Sandra says, beautiful landscape. And Meg says, I really like the lovely photo. April says that would be so fun. Yeah. Maybe we should arrange that at some point. Have a mass exodus, or mass visit to Scotland to try and tie everybody in. Stacy says that's on my bucket list, and Nadia says thank you, everyone. Right, okay. So next up, then we have Jack, and Jack said this photo just makes me feel good. it just feels like someone's looking over you. It's part of a wall art and was put outside. And yeah, nice bit of fun there, real creativity. I think there's always a thing when you're photographing some kind of carving or statue or creation that's not necessarily your own but made by somebody else. The trick then is, how do you make that bit interesting? And there's all different bits in this. We don't know what it looked like. You know, something like this, you could Jack's rather come in with a close crop, so we don't get a sense of place or context. So that changes our idea. So you could take one of these with a much wider shot, get a sense of context, or you can pick out tiny little details if you wanted, and you can kind of zoom in and do a macro on fingers or an eye or something like that. There's so many different ways you can approach something like this. And what John's decided to do is just come in and really zero in on the face and the roundness of those cheeks and the hands. So it's just face and hands and curves, really. Really gone for that kind of notion of the shape and the texture, I think. So fun shot there. Fun shot there, Jack. Sort of glad you could send that one in. Stacy says creative mural and a good photo. April says great texture in that one. Susan says, wow, didn't expect this, Jack, love it. Yeah, and that's true. I mean, it's part of what I love about these podcasts, challenges, best of, where people send stuff in, is everybody's got a different idea of what they're going for. And even if two people decide to go for a landscape, there'll be different landscapes. And even if they were photographing the same landscape, they will photograph them in different ways. It's that uniqueness of photography. Sometimes it can kind of feel a bit depressing that you just sort of look around and you see some people just churning out the same stuff all the time. But actually, when you really get to know people and you kind of develop your own eye and your own voice, really, with photography, things become unique to you. And just that notion of everybody's sort of interested in something slightly different. And when we kind of come together like this with a community of photographers, we all end up choosing something quite different, whether it's something personal with a family member, whether it's art, take your photograph of art, whether it's landscapes, still life, or somebody wandering past in a steampunk costume. It's whatever tends to grab you and then what you find interesting. So thank you for sending that in. Next up then, yes. This is Meg. And Meg's we've already talked about this at home, and there's a notion of finding the technically best photograph, and there's the notion of finding the most fun or the most meaningful photograph, the favourite photograph. And this was Meg's favourite photograph. She says, back in March, me and my mum went to the Armadillo in Glasgow to see Giovanni Panici, who is a professional dancer on Strictly Come Dancing. It's my all-time favourite TV show. And I do have to say that, yes, if you ever meet Meg and you get to know Meg, one of the things you get to know about Meg is she is an absolute Strictly Come Dancing hyper fan, really, super fan. There's virtually nothing she doesn't know about it. And so one of her favourite dancers on it is Giovanni. So when Giovanni was doing a tour last year, she was in seventh heaven to be able to get to go and see it. So she said he was doing his own solo tour called Made in Italy, along with Lauren Oakley, who is another professional dancer on Strictly Come Dancing. I took this selfie of myself with the stage in the background just before the show went live. The show was absolutely spectacular. And what can you say? I mean, it's so much fun. This is life. This is excitement. This is mobile phone territory as well. It's understanding. I was chatting with Maggie about this the other day, about the notion that photography, is a successful photo is different in different contexts, and it's about purpose. What's the purpose of the photo, and how well does the photo capture the purpose? And in this case, Meg wanted to have a memory of her at this dance tour. and it's just beautifully captured. Puts a big smile on my face. So many thanks for sending that one in, Meg. I thought it was definitely fun. So a couple of comments. So Stacy says, I love the selfie. Andy says, memory gold. April says, good selfie. You got the whole pink stage in this one. Sandra says, lovely photo of Meg. Nadia says, a lovely selfie. Susan says, wonderful, Meg. I've been gifted a ticket to the Strictly in Newcastle at the end of this month. Can't wait. Oh, well, Susan, now you're just going to end up with permanent conversations with Meg if you ever start talking Strictly with her. And John says, what a fun shot. Excellent. Okay, so let's move on then to Sandra. Now, Sandra sent in this one, said it was really difficult as I've taken a number of photos this year that I'm really proud of. But the area of photography I improved most over the year was portraiture, so I decided to choose this photo from this category. And I think that's a really important part. One of the things I said when saying about sending an image and tell me why, what is it about, for some people it's this is their best photo or favorite photo, or their best, what they consider to be their best photo, is because they've achieved awards or prizes or good peer reviews or anything like that. And for some people it's a sense of how much they feel they've improved. Sometimes we take a photo which turns out to be better than we could have hoped with, and it's these photos that very often mean more to us, even if they don't necessarily mean something to other people. And so there's a whole range of whether you judge a photo by how much it means to you, how much it means to somebody else, how much it reached the target of what you were trying to do. There's a whole bunch of different things, or just how much memories it conjures up, how good it makes you feel in recalling those memories. And so here we go. I mean, they're a beautiful photo. I mean, yeah, it's a stunning photo. We last with a lovely old camera, nicely set up. So Sandra goes on, although the attached photo is not the most successful in competition terms that I've taken this year, it is one of a group that I am the proudest of because I was in control of setting up the props and suggesting poses for the subjects. The photo shoot was one that took place in my back garden. It was of my niece and her family for their annual calendar. The person in the photo is my great niece Ivy. I must admit, actually, a little kind of smile on my face with that. Your great niece is called Ivy. I used to have a great aunt called Ivy. And it's just that notion, you sort of kind of see it that, Ivy was one of these, for my generation, Ivy was a name which was an older generation. There weren't any people, there were no girls I went to school with called Ivy, because Ivy was considered an old woman's name, because it was my grandmother's generation who were used the word Ivy. But now we go, grandfather, we go down to grandchildren's generation, and you get a name like Ivy coming back into. And I would love the way these kind of names kind of come in and fall out of favour, but then kind of return back round. Decades, generations later. Lovely photo there, though, Sandra. Thanks for sending that one in. April says, what a cutie. That's a good catch, good portrait. Stacy says, oh, this is cute. Nadia says, beautiful. Susan says, that's gorgeous, Sandra. Great image, one for the memory bank. Meg says, thank you, everyone, for your comments. Fantastic. I'm so happy you have it for you, Susan. Have a great time in Newcastle. April says, same here, Kim. And Stacy says, I went to a school with an Ivy back in kindergarten. Well, of course, mind you, it also does vary from country to country as well. There are certain names that can be quite popular, say in North America, that are out of favour in the UK and vice versa. And Sandra says, thank you all for your lovely comments. Right, next up then, we're going to go to Viji. And Viji sent in two, although they are of taken around the same time, the same topic. And she says, this past year has been particularly hectic, leaving me no time to relax, and I haven't been able to take as many photographs as I would have liked, and I haven't been able to submit as many photos as desired for the critique segment. However, business-wise, it has been a good year, and I know from chats that I've had with Viji that she's been extraordinarily busy with developing a new business. So yes, unfortunately the photography's taken a little bit of a back seat, but she still has all the passion for it. As she says, my favourite photograph from the past year was taken during my recent vacation. I took 2 pictures of the bonfire, one in its original form and another with a slow shutter speed. And so this is the one taken with a slow shutter speed. I enjoyed both photos and the way they captured the movement of the fire. I could still feel the chill and the warmth of that particular evening as I sat near the bonfire. And then she wrote a little thing to go with it saying, the log's soft hiss, a gentle song, whispers solace in the night. I wish to chase the days gone long and rewind time with all its might. So beautiful photos, and yes, very evocative. You know, when you see whether it's the slow shutter speed or the kind of faster one, I mean, something like this, I think you could almost hear the crackling of the logs. With something like this, you do tend to kind of almost hear the hiss of some of the bits of steam escaping, and you can feel that sort of the glow and the warmth that you would get on a cool evening. So, lovely photos there, Viji. Thank you for sending them in. Sandra, April says the bouquet is nice. Susan says I prefer the second image with the gorgeous bouquet, and Sandra says I love the close-up with the bouquet background. Yeah, I think you're right. Of the two, I think the second one tends to feel much more like you're. I think the closer up part of it just really. It's like that bit where you're just. Sometimes you're sitting there and you kind of lose yourself staring into the fire. It sort of dissolves away the rest of the world around it, and you just kind of find yourself staring at a particular bit of log with a particular bit of flame coming up. Quite meditative. Nadia says, I love the long exposure one too. Nope, not that one. Let's go to this one. Next up is from Alex. Alex says, due to health problems, I've hardly been out with my camera in the last year, but I did manage to venture to the Wetland Trust in Calaverick. It's a WWT, trying to remember what the WWT is. Wetland Wildlife and Wetland and Wildlife, Calaverick Wetland Centre anyway, in October, and I got this family of hooper swans. And it's a fantastic shot. I love this. It's the kind of shot I would love to get and never quite do, because if I see swans flying and I've got my camera, by the time I realise I've got my camera, I can only see the back of them at a distance as they're flying into flying off far away. I'm not a natural wildlife photographer, and I'm never prepared for it. So this is the kind of photo I kind of always wish I could get and never quite managed to get. So certainly kudos to you there for that there, Alex. Kind of fun one to get. So yeah, thanks for sending that one in. What have we got here? Stacy says, I totally understand putting photography on the back burner. Sometimes things take an importance. I love the colours. Yeah, I mean, we've all got to play around with the priorities. I think one of the things we do have to be careful of, though, I just on a quick kind of psychological thing, again, something Maggie and I have been discussing more recently, is that notion that what nourishes us is really important, and it tends to quite often be the stuff that we put on the back burner as soon as other things come in, and the stresses and the strains of life as they get in the way, the crises, the constant kind of things, and we go, okay, I'll just put my insert love of choice of, you know, what makes you feel good about yourself, what you know, and in our case, for most of us, that's photography. It's our time when we get to put aside the worries of the world, where we can just dive into something, where we can master something, when it feeds our souls. And at times of stress, it gets put on one side as kind of downgraded, and yet we've got to be so careful about that, because it's like it's these things which recharge our batteries. It's these things which actually nourish us and give us the resilience to be able to face the stresses and strains of the world. And when we take that away, I think we can often find ourselves feeling even more fragile and even less able to face the world. So yes, we always have to prioritize, and sometimes, of course, there are going to be emergencies whereby photography is going to have to take a back seat. But I think it's something just to be aware of, that where possible, we need to try and bring it back into our lives because it is something that nourishes us. Okay, that's tangent aside. April says, great catch. They are large swans. Stacy says, love when people can catch birds in flight. Good capture. Susan says, you deserve Smug Points for getting such sharp swans, Alex. And absolutely he will do. And in fact, everybody who's here today will get Smug Points. But I'm going to talk to you more about the Smug Points at the end, which is why I'm not necessarily giving them out as we go. Sandra says, lovely wildlife photo. John says, well done capturing the swans. Nadia also says, well done for catching them in flight. Stacy says, balancing life. Susan says, you just said out loud what I often think, Kim, getting the balance is really difficult. And it's true, it's never straightforward, but we give it a go. Okay, so quick little reminder here that if you happen to find these podcasts useful, interesting, entertaining, and you'd like to support them, then buymeacoffee.com/Kim Ayres is one of the ways you can do it. Right, okay, so let's move on. And next up we have April. And April said, this is my favourite photo of 2023. It was taken in the Badlands of South Dakota. The landscape is amazing. It is like being in an episode of Star Trek. This photo was one of my photos that attempted to give the viewer the understanding of the beauty of what the Badlands look like. And it does look absolutely stunning. Incredible textures and lines and colours and quite an expanse. The only thing I would say here, April, is that it's difficult for me to try and get a proper sense of scale. I'm trying to. I'm not totally sure. I mean, these, there's bushes. Are they bushes? Are they trees? Is this something whereby somebody standing there would be a tiny little dot that you couldn't see, or would they be kind of be coming halfway up the mound? Presumably that is, but. It's a stunning landscape, but for future reference, try and think with something like this. For you standing there, you get this amazing sense of scale. But for somebody who's never been there, I'm not totally sure what the scale is, but it does look like it's probably pretty amazing, and certainly somewhere worth visiting. So really quite an amazing place by the look of it. So thanks very much for sending that one in, April. Sandra says, that looks like a great place to visit, April. Right, okay. So next up then, we'll go to this one from Robert. And Robert says, this photo was taken at Yosemite National Park, where Ansel Adams photographed El Capitan and the Dome. I took many, many, many shots. But this was the one I think was the best, at least the best story. I believe we critiqued it earlier, and we did in fact critique this one back in episode 160, if anybody's interested. So yes, this is one of those ones where, to go back to a bit like when we were talking to, was it Jack or John? No, it was John. Earlier, with this photo of the grist mill, is that sometimes you go to a place. Now, this one at Yosemite Park, the particular view has been absolutely photographed to death, photographed under every conceivable condition by everybody who's ever had a camera and managed to get there. And you even have the viewing platform where you can take the classic photo from. And if you're going there, why wouldn't you? It would feel kind of wrong to be standing there and not bring out your camera. What I loved about this one was the idea that, Robert said at the time, he stood there just like all these people and took all the photos of the view himself. But what was also interesting here was, as he's sort of walking back to the car, turns around and looks back, and then decides to take a photo of the people photographing the landscape as well. So rather than it just being the landscape, you change the narrative, you create the story, because the fact is, if you're at that viewing platform and you're taking the photo, you're not going to see anybody in the photo, so you have that whole sense of you there out in this incredible, wild, amazing landscape. When you step back like this, you suddenly realise you're not alone in a wild, amazing landscape. You're with a whole bunch of other people in a wild and amazing landscape. And that's a different story, and it's kind of fun. And I remember at the time talking about the fact that what I quite liked about this was the fact there's a whole bunch of other stories going on. That when you look here, you've also got presumably grandmother holding up the baby. Presumably this woman here will be having will have the phone to get the photo of them. At the background you've got, looks like there's people sitting down on the wall here. This person's hand there, presumably also got the camera, will be taking a photo of people with the view in the background. This person here got their phone up rather than a camera. People with their tripods all set up, people with big lenses and their tripods. And over here, what looks like a graduation ceremony kind of going on as well. So there's stories within stories on something like this, which is always quite fun as well. So thank you for sending that one in, Robert. A good fun photo. Where are we go? Yeah, Stacy says. Oh right, okay. Sorry, just back up a little bit here. April says, you would be a tiny dot. I was standing on top of a mountain myself. It is vast. Okay, that's great. That gives me a better sense. I kind of thought it probably was. Stacy says, beautiful April. I love this landscape. Mountains are so breathtaking. I love canyons. I would love to go eventually see it myself. Stacy says, Yosemite National Park is another breathtaking place to photograph. Absolutely stunning. Sandra says, another great place to visit, and this is definitely on the bucket list. Sandra says, also goes on to say, this is more interesting with all the colourful people in the foreground. April says, I remember this shot. Great documentary shot. Beautiful landscape. Susan says, I really like that you've got all the people in this image. It creates more of the story. John says, you're right. I would not have taken this shot, but I do like it. And Stacy agrees with Sandra. Oh, we're talking about motorhomes and going off with their dog Bentley. Cool, right, okay, so let's move on then. Next up then is Anne. And Anne put in this one. And says, my best photo for 2023, taken in the Salton Sea area of California. This picture placed first in the Dallas Camera Club competition in May. Oh, congratulations on that. And that's, that's a kind of really rewarding feeling. If you're in your camera club and you get first place in it. I think quite, when you're kind of judged by your peers as well, and you get a good response from it. That's always, it feels good. So yeah, lovely photo, amazing photo. It does have it's got that warm feel, the haziness in the background there. Just know the sun's going to be hot. Amazing, just fantastic shapes. It's just all these. This is all about the verticals and the horizontals. It's tiny little bits of diagonal. But when we talked before about the notion that the diagonals give you a sense of movement and energy and dynamism, whereas verticals give you a sense of stability. And in this case, it gives a sort of sense of age, that these poles have been, and these walls have been sitting here for a long time. And that's added to by the notion of the decay of the plants driving around, but the plants lying around, of the graffiti that's been spread all over it, of the fact that these poles are a bit rusty. Tyre repair, 24-hour, obviously not for a long time. Yeah, great. Again, going back to that notion when I said right back at with Susan at the beginning, that there's a whole sort of subgenre or genre of photography about the notion of decay, or the beauty of decay, or just the interest of decay, and this sort of ties in with that. It's not dying tulips, but somehow you are kind of sitting in the same genre as such. So great photo there. Thanks very much for sending that one in, Anne, and I'm delighted that you managed to score first place at Dallas Camera Club with that. Where are we? April says, I love these abandoned shots. Andy says, love this. Susan says, well done, Anne, a great image. Robert says, thanks you all for your kind comments. Sandra says, I love this. John says, interesting and good photo. Stacy says, another great shot, remote places and an old pumping station closed. When you drive through the desert with miles of road, nothing to find is an old station. And Jack also says, thank you. Cool. Right. Okay. So next up then we have Nurije's photo of a Tina Turner tribute. And that's a great, I mean, that's where she's taken up the pose here, which is that iconic Tina Turner style pose, and a good tribute act always knows how to get those iconic moments and perfectly set up for the photos. Beautiful backlight, lovely colouring. Having said that, it's all very well that on the stage, they're performers, they know what they're doing to make your images look right. You've still got to get the image, and that's not easy to do. Anybody who's tried to do live performance for photography knows that the low light setting, the fact that people are constantly moving, the fact that the light is constantly changing means quite often your hit rate can be extraordinarily low. But Nurije goes on to say, this is one that the one that I would consider to be my best photo for 2023 is this one I took at the tribute tour to Tina Turner, 2 weeks before my all-time favourite singer passed away. Unfortunately, I never got to see her perform live. This also got a highly commended by the judge on PhotoCrowd, which is another reason why it makes it so special for me. So yeah, so combination here of, I mean, you're always hearing me saying backlight. Backlight is the photographer's secret weapon. And when you're doing performance photography, very often stages they give you that bit of backlight, plus the smoke and as well, which kind of scatters the light as well. So it automatically becomes deeply atmospheric. So that's lovely in itself. There's that notion of the memory, the fact that Nadia is a huge Tina Turner fan. She never got a chance to see Tina Turner herself, but you know, seeing the tribute act was that kind of next best thing to be able to do that. And the fact that when you then put it onto sites like PhotoCrowd and get a highly commended from the judge, that always means that it always tends to feel quite good as well. I always tend to feel slightly better when I get, when I get a judge review, like, you know, a high score from a judge competition rather than just the kind of crowd vote. It's not to say I don't enjoy scoring well in a crowd vote, but it always feels slightly better to me, I think, if I get something from a judge vote. So, yes, nicely done, Nurije. Thank you for sending that one in. So, where are we? So, Stacy says, love the silhouette. Anne says, oh, thank you, everyone. Fun shot to take. April says, good shot. Sandra says, atmospheric. Susan says, well done on getting such a tricky shot. Which said Maria is Nurije. Nurije. Nadia says, love this photo. You can feel the atmosphere. John says, that would be a hard shot to get. Well done. Meg says, sorry to hear that, but I also like her songs. Stacey says it was sad. Yeah, Tina Turner's no longer with us. Okay, next up then, we have Janet. No, we don't. We have Marilyn. Sorry, I just put these two the wrong way around. So this one from Marilyn. Another abandoned place. So Marilyn says, my favourite photo is an abandoned homestead on the high plains of Colorado. It's on private property and I finally had permission to photograph it. Conditions were not the best, but we take what we can get. The property was settled in the 1800s with a lot of acreage to farm. The family still lives elsewhere on the property, but sadly have done little to preserve this one, as it was it was in much worse condition than it was a few years ago. Regardless, it was a beautiful fall day and it was a fun outing. So yeah, once again, a bit like Anne's picture, you've got this kind of deserted, decaying building. Very different kind of feel to it. This one though, with, you know, because this was obviously a residential place as well, which comes as a different kind of feeling than a business place closed down. Both with two very different stories. What's quite interesting with this one as well, though, is Marilyn's also kind of framed the picture. So you've got that kind of frame within a frame, as such, so that the picture, the building itself, is framed by this tree with the trees with the branches coming down around it. But we've still got the sun cutting through the leaves as well. So again, there's that strong blue skies, that kind of burnt late summer, early autumn grass. Very kind of atmospheric. So a great shot there, Marilyn. Thanks very much for sending that one in. Right, oh, where am I? I'm here. Okay. So April says, great shot. The sunburst is also neat. Nadia says, great shot. Stacy says, love all the abandoned places. Colorado and the plains have lots of old wooden homes. Susan says, I would love to spend a few hours in this place, Marilyn. April says, I wish I could visit this area also. And Sandra says, great setting. Feels like a beautiful warm day. Cool. Okay. So we're now moving on to the last couple of photos, and then I'll tell you more about the Smug Points system, leaderboard that I'm going to be setting up. So we'll move on to now Janet. So where are we? Janet sent in this one. Zoom in a little bit there. And says this is Confederation Bridge, looking from Prince Edward Island towards New Brunswick in Canada. I took a good shot of the bridge, was one of my goals for my spring road trip. I was really pleased with the texture in the foreground and the way the bridge seems to disappear into the distance. And I think this is lovely. This has really got that sense of, when we talk about leading lines, you can't get much better than being led into the photo. And the way that the contrast is stronger, darker in the foreground, fading as it gets further away. And I think that probably with this, I can imagine it working in colour, depending on what the colour was like, but actually having it in black and white just makes it all about the shape and the texture, rather than maybe if you actually had, if you had the right colour scheme, the colours might enhance it. But if you didn't, if it was a slightly hazy day, the colours might have been a bit muted. I think probably the idea of going mono with this was a really good editing choice. So yeah, great photo that, Janet. I'm glad you managed to get that one when you were out at Prince Edward Island. April says, I love this shot, looks good in black and white. Stacy says, love the lines and the black and white, lots of good textures. Sandra says, very interesting view of the bridge and the dip in the middle. And Susan says, love all the shades of grey in this one. John also says, this photo brings back a memory of driving over it back in '98. Well, that's always fun as well when you get to see a place where you go, oh, I've been there, recognise that one. Nadia says, cool, love this one. Reminds me of the one near me in Dundee. Oh, I know, it's a bit, the rail bridge in Dundee also has a curve that goes round and across. It's also quite iconic. Very difficult to get the right place. So I've never managed to get a proper photo of the rail bridge in Dundee. If you know the right place, you probably can, but wherever I was never quite at exactly the right angle for me to get what I wanted. But yeah, get the right angle and the right weather conditions and lighting conditions, and bridges crossing a water are an excellent kind of source for interesting good photos. Right, okay. Nadia says, Nadia said that, and Andy says, great photos, everyone. Right, okay, so on to my last photo, which is from Andy. No, not that one. That one, yes. Now, hey, take a look at this one. It's not just the photo, but also what Andy says about this, which I really love. So Andy says, I think this is my best shot of 2023. I've taken better technical shots, and I've learned a lot in the studio, but I've probably learned more in how to capture people and moments quickly in this shot. From seeing this gent walking out of the pub, to talking to him, to taking a few shots of him, was probably about 2 minutes. That's seriously impressive. There is something magic that happens in the first few seconds if you can capture people before they have a chance to compose themselves and start to pose. I've seen fantastic characters disappear before my lens if you've given them too much time to pose. I always shoot on manual, so I was really pleased that I happened to get the exposure, depth of focus, etc. nailed for what I'm now going to call the golden minute. So I mean, like we were talking right back at the beginning with Susan, I thought it was quite nice to kind of bookend this with Susan's steampunk one at the beginning as well. It's two very different kinds of street portraiture, if you like, of people in outfits who are also quite happy to be photographed. And whereas Susan kind of virtually never photographs people. Andy, photographing people is Andy's speciality. But that notion of, whereas Susan's was at a festival, trying to grab somebody out on the street is always a slightly different matter. Having said that, somebody who's dressed up as Elvis, coming out of what looks like, well, you said it's a pub. It looks like obviously a music-themed pub, given the fact that there's all these LPs up on the wall at the top here. A security person here, love the way she's looking over her shoulder at him. And is brilliant. And it's a very, very different thing. I think for myself, because my portraits always tend to be, I spend a lot of time with people. If I was going to do street portraiture, I probably tend to fall more like Susan does, where I would talk to somebody for a while, get them to play around with a couple of poses until I found something that I liked. This idea of kind of capturing something and the immediacy of it, of just trying to get those first few moments, I think is something really quite special and something you've got to develop a real knack for, and overcome a huge amount of, well, maybe personal insecurities, unless maybe you're one of these people who isn't bothered by it at all, and you're just quite happy to go up and talk to people straight away. I think it's something I would have to develop rather than be able to naturally do quite quickly. But the effect of it, brilliant. I mean, you're right, you would never get a posed photo like this as such if you spent a couple of minutes with him, and then he would immediately start creating a character, adjusting to the lens, making sure that he was getting the pose right. Whereas this one has such a sense of immediacy about it, makes it really powerful. So brilliant shot there, Andy, and a great one to finish off with these podcasts. So a couple of comments there. Sandra says, great portrait. Stacy says, Elvis impersonator, very good. April says, very good pose. It was great he let you take photos of him in such a short time. Susan says, brilliant, Andy. I really like the security girl in the background too, with great separation between the two. Stacey says, there are still people getting into an Elvis character. It kind of died out until the movie brought it back. Meg says, I really like the songs of Elvis Presley because he's a great singer. So yes, what a fantastic set of photos. So everybody had a busy 2023, and hopefully we're going to have an even busier or more fun 2024. Because as we keep taking photos, we improve. Keep pushing ourselves. And all of you who come and regularly visit the Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres podcast are passionate about photography and want to improve your photography and are pushing yourselves. So the podcasts are here to help you. So we're starting another year. We've got 2024 ahead of us. We are so fortunate to be able to charge ahead with another year together. So one of the things I thought to come back then to what I thought would be fun is I'm going to introduce a more formalized fun of Smug Points. So everybody here who has submitted an image gets Smug Points, but also everybody here who's turned up to chat gets Smug Points too. So what I've decided to do is we're going to create a leaderboard. Now at the moment I'm going to keep it in the Facebook group until I come up with some kind of other idea, because I know not everybody uses Facebook. What I might do, introduce into the podcast, is a kind of a running total of the top 3 or top 5 of the leaderboard or something like that. But in essence, the way I'm going to do this, let me just pull down my little list here. So the idea then is each week we'll have a set of Smug Points going. And turning up to the podcast, commenting and chatting live with us, I think is a great sort of start, a great kind of contribution, and so that deserves Smug Points as well. So if you turn up live, you manage to watch live, you manage to comment live, then you will get 5 Smug Points. Now, then if we're going to do a challenge like we did today, you're going to get 10 Smug Points. I think 10 Smug Points for entering the challenge is a kind of, because. And then so everybody who's turned up today, everyone who's commented will get 5 Smug Points. Everyone who's put a photo in will get 10 points. So if you've turned up today to comment and you've put in a picture, there you go, 15 Smug Points before you start. Within the challenges as well, I'm probably going to pick out a favourite let's say a top 3, and I'll give 30 points for my favourite image of the challenge, 20 points for the second favourite, 10 points. So these are bonus Smug points. So for this particular one, I came up with this idea, thought this would be great, and then I was really struggling to work out who I was going to give. So, like every single competition, I'm probably the only one who agrees with this top 3. But this is not a democracy. This is a benign dictatorship. So what I say goes. So for this particular challenge, what I'm going to do is I'm going to award Andy's Elvis picture. Is my favourite of these. There's one sent in for this one. So Andy's going to get a bonus of 30 Smug points. My second one is second place is Janet with her Prince Edward Island bridge disappearing into the mist, or the haze rather. So Janet's going to get an extra bonus 20 Smug points, and my third goes to Alex for his swans, just because I can't imagine, I would just love to be able to get a shot like that. So Alex will get a bonus 10 points for the swans. So you start to see that this is the way that's going to go. Now, next week we're going to be doing a critique challenge. Now, to encourage people to put images in for critique, if you put an image in for critique, you will get 25 Smug points. Okay. Now, given the fact that I have a limited amount, so generally speaking, it's 4, maybe maximum of 5 that I can do for a critique in any one feedback session. If I get more than that, then the people who will get the Smug points will be the people that I select for the critique. You won't automatically get if you submit. It's only if I select your image to put into the critique, but then you will get 25 points. Next up is the idea of invite a friend. You know, I'm always saying invite a friend, bring a friend along, get them to introduce them to these podcasts. So if you invite a friend along and they come along, watch it live, leave a comment to let me know that they're watching it live, and you let me know that they're your friend, then I will allocate you a bonus of 30 Smug points. Okay, so you can get 30 Smug points bringing a friend along. And within all this, there will be bonus Smug points, which, you know, throw them in. So if somebody's, you know, gives me a comment that makes me laugh, or says something which I find particularly interesting, or just is supportive to other members of the groups, because some of this might actually happen, say, in the Facebook group as well. Sometimes somebody puts in an image and other people can be really helpful on that, and sometimes somebody says something with great insight, and I think that's useful too. So I will have bonus points that I will discretionary, you know, by my discretion, I will just hand out every now and again. So this is the idea then. So at the end of each week, I'm going to have to probably add myself another kind of 15-20 minutes worth of stuff to do at the end of the podcast, but I'll go through, see who's turned up, see who's got the bonus points and what have you, and I will then add them to the leaderboard. What do we exchange the Smug points for? Well, first of all, there's the notion of just status, kudos. How far up the leaderboard can you go? Who wants to be up there? But I think what I will also do is I will try and have a think about the notion of some kind of prizes. So one of the things I'm thinking of at the moment is that whoever's collected the most amount of Smug points at the end of the year, I will give them a 2-hour personal mentoring session. Now that could, if they live locally, that could be one-to-one, you know, just meet up locally and do whatever. If it's if you live remotely, then maybe we can do that via the video calls or something like that. But the idea being a 2-hour personal mentoring session for you, specifically for you, on whatever topic or aspect of photography that you're interested in. That will go to the person who builds up the most Smug points across the course of the year. Having said that, I don't think it should just be one thing for the whole year. So another idea at the moment is the idea of maybe quarterly, every 3 months or so. The person who's got the most Smug points for that, what we could do is maybe turn over a podcast specifically to you. So you send in maybe 4 of your images, and if there's specific things that you're wanting to kind of get down to, we will dedicate the podcast to giving you feedback on those photos and addressing the issues which you feel are you most want to know how to develop, or sticking points you want to get past. I quite like the idea of doing monthly kind of giveaways too, but I still haven't worked that out yet. So this whole thing is experimental. I am open to suggestion. I'm willing for, if you have ideas for this and how it might develop, things that you think could make it more fun, make it more interesting, then let me know. The whole point of this is to really use the Smug Points to encourage the idea of the community and the community involvement. Yes, fine, I'm here figureheading it, if you like. I'm the one in front of the camera. But it's not just, this isn't just a passive photography community. It's not just about me here telling you about photos and you just sitting there passively listening. We do this live. We do this live so we can have the chat. We have the Facebook group so that we can support each other. That the whole idea of this is the community. And I want to develop that as much as possible. So the Smug Points are built around the idea of contributing to the podcast, but contributing to the community as well. So as part of that as well, your feedback, it's all experimental. These points might change. I'm making this up as I go along. But I will try and formalise it. We might find that a few weeks down the road, the point system is utterly unmanageable. I may have to change them, increase the number, make them smaller, whatever. But also the idea of prizes. But for that matter, if you happen to have any contacts within the photography business or photography equipment distributors or anything who are looking to sponsor or looking to have freebie giveaways or anything like that, then let me know. Put them in touch with me. Because that would be kind of fun if, every now and again I've certainly got an interesting filter that will go on a camera that can be given away or something like that for somebody who's accumulated enough Smug Points in a particular area. That has a certain appeal too. But if you have any thoughts, ideas, ways you think that this could enhance these podcasts, enhance our community, then please, please, please let me know. Couple of comments. Susan says, perhaps you could award Smug Points for anyone who buys you a coffee. I did genuinely think about this. But I thought that, please support the podcast by buying me a coffee as well. Absolutely no. buymeacoffee.com/Kim Ayres. That certainly definitely helps these podcasts. Somehow, though, the idea of getting Smug Points for buying your way into, essentially that becomes a way of buying Smug Points, just feels just a little bit unfair. So I decided I will keep the Buy Me a Coffee separate from the Smug Points. But yeah, I can see where you're coming from. I did think about it. April says, love it. A new version of Photo Crowd. Stacy says, fun, Kim. Loved all the photos today. Lovely podcast. Hope everyone enjoys the week. And April says, impressive ideas. Stacy also agrees. So there we go. So next week is a critiques of feedback session. I'm just going to be feedback only. So I'll maybe 4 or so images, 4 to 5 images, depending on what's sent in. And remember, if you send in your image, let me know what it is about the photo that you're wanting help with, what your sticking points are. And of course, now you'll get a bonus 25 Smug Points too to put on the leaderboard. Sandra says she likes the idea of Smug Points too. So that pretty much brings us to the end of the podcast. And so, yes, thank you ever so much to everybody who sent stuff in. Thank you to everybody who's been chatting and supporting it. Thank you to everybody who's been involved in the past year. Just really helping to grow and make these podcasts fun and interesting. And we now have 2024 ahead of us. Let's really have fun with this. Let's have fun with the Smug Points. But let's really develop the photography. And let me use these podcasts. Let me help you. That's what these are about. Let me help you develop your photography. Let me know what your sticking points are. Send me your photos for feedback. Come up with suggestions and ideas of what kind of podcasts you would like to see, if there's any particular themes or ideas. In fact, actually, I think I will do that as well, is that if anybody kind of suggests an idea or a theme for a podcast that I end up using, I'll throw in some bonus Smug Points for that as well, because that's also useful. Right, okay. April says, have a good week, everyone. Sandra says, love the idea of Smug Points. Viji says, good night, everyone. We'll watch tomorrow. I was out and came back, so just joined us at the end. It says, Happy New Year. So yes, Happy New Year, everyone. Take care. See you all next week. Bye-bye.